Welcome back to Crossout, welcome back to the test server. We haven't done a video on this yet up until now because I've been away for the weekend, so we haven't had time to look at it, but we are here now. We're going to cover today's changes, just briefly talk about what I think about all of the changes, at least the ones that I find relevant. And overall, I must say that I actually quite like this patch. We're seeing a theme of quite a lot of damage reductions all over the board. For some reason, it's very much based on the number 7, which I don't know why they just decided to go for 7 for so many of these changes, but at least we are seeing for a lot of weapons a damage reduction, which means that I think they're taking some pace out of the games and makes all weapons damage just a little bit less to make builds last longer, and this way have just tiny bit longer battles in general. So this is overall just a balanced patch. We're not really seeing any game-changing changes that will make hovers work differently, wheels work differently. We are seeing some changes to tracks, but let's just cover it from one end to the other and get on with it. And we're gonna start in the common rarity with the chords. Let's see, I don't even think we have any chords. No, we don't, but we can check them out in here. So basically the chord will be changed. It will now have 10% less damage than it had before. So a tiny bit of a damage nerf to the chord. And yeah, I mean, this one seems to be purely just based on the fact that they are gonna change. Okay, I just thought you couldn't get out, but they are gonna make all weapons damage less in order to make battles seem longer. As you can see here, it's now, is it just a flat 3 damage per shot? Now let's see, 3, 6, 9, 13. All right, so 3.3 damage on it, I assume, or 3.2 rather. 248, no, 3.15, something like that. Because it always rounds up when you deal 0.5 damage if you deal continuous damage. So 3.15 damage, it seems like. That makes the most sense. Something around there, at least. That is what we'll have to assume. So interesting change there, but it will make lower PS battles last longer, at least, and that is the only common rarity gun that we will see a change to. Then we have the rare parts. For the rare parts, generally all power scores are being reduced, which probably has to do something with the fact that now everyone will be placed in lower PS brackets unless they are running legendaries or epic, not legendaries or relics is what I'm trying to say here. Let's see. The legendaries, yeah, legendaries are not getting a PS reduction, so it will increase the gap between legendaries and relics, meaning that you will less often encounter people who seal club with a scorpion and very low power score. At least for a lot of builds, it will drag your power score somewhat down, and hopefully that will help some of you guys out who do experience seal clubbing. But besides that, we have the Wasp and the Judge, the little boy, which are all explosive weapons that they are touching upon. So the Wasp will have its missile explosion reduced by 7%, the damage from the missile explosion. And the Wasp is, for those of you who don't know, this one right there. So this is the Wasp getting its damage reduced by 7%. As I said, 7% is quite often in this patch. I don't know why, but it just is. Then we have the cannon, the Judge, which has its projectile explosion damage increased by 5%. So this means the AoE part of the Judge damage. So as we have covered previously, when you shoot a cannon, we can select any cannon here. We're not going to test the damage, but we're just going to talk about what it does. So basically the cannon here, it deals damage in 2 ways. First of all, when we shoot, we have some hit damage and we have some explosion damage. And the hit damage is wherever the part hits. So this part specifically right there will take some amount of damage from the hit itself, and then once the hit has happened, then the explosion damage will apply, and the explosion damage will be increased by 5%. Then we have the little boy, which is the turreted version of the rare cannon, which is this one, has its cooldown increased from 3.5 to 4 seconds, so not a lot there. And then the Rapier, which has its projectile explosion damage reduced by 10% and the durability reduced as well. So as you can see, again, I think I'm really seeing a theme here, because if you go on, then the machine gun defender, the limited angle machine gun, let's see, defender, this one right here, will have its damage also increased by 10%, and that besides that, we will also have its durability reduced. So it seems like overall This will help crafts in general be more durable, but guns also deal a little bit less damage and be a little less effect, or have a little less HP. So guns will fall off at the same rate as before, but in general crafts will be better at staying alive. This, for example, means that if you're really good at protecting your guns, then you might find that you can keep your guns for longer, but if your guns are very exposed, you won't really feel a difference overall. Besides this, the machine gun Vector also has its damage reduced by 7%, the shotgun Spitfire, the shotgun Sledgehammer. So all of these different ones, the Vector is, for a lot of people, the most used machine gun for raids and stuff like that. And then we have the Spitfire, which is the limited angle. And finally, we have the Sledgehammer, which is the classic shotgun right here, which is, they're all having their damage reduced by either 5 or 7%. Then we have the special rarity, which will also see a 7% decrease in their power score. So you will also find that all of your special rarity builds will have their power score reduced if you have a lot of weapons on it. And this means that, first of all, the Cannon Prosecutor will have its gunshot damage increased by 15%. Now, gunshot damage is the opposite of the explosion, as we talked before. So the gunshot damage, when we're talking about that, is the damage that you deal upon impact with the first part that you hit. So for example, if we shoot that part, the instant damage that you deal onto the specific part that you shoot, or every damage is instant as soon as you hit, but the damage that on the specific part that we hit is what the gunshot damage is counted for, and then the explosion is the explosion damage. That is pretty simple. And the cannon perk is now improved. So as you can see here, fires armor-piercing projectiles exploding after penetration of 102 points or 100 centimeters of armor. Now, as we have previously calculated before, one block is around 33 centimeters. So this penetrates like around a little bit more than 3 layers, just a little bit more, but around 3 layers, we could say. And or 102 parts of durability. This basically means that if we shoot this part, this is 90 or 31 points of durability. So it would actually go straight through here, and it would deal its gunshot damage to this part right here, which is the Colossus. Since the Colossus has 383, then that part will of course not instantly fall off unless the explosion damage applied to it as well as the parts around is enough to remove it. So that's basically how this works. And if there was multiple light parts between this, then it would continue into the build until the 4th block, and then it will deal the gunshot damage right here, and it would fall off or explode unless the parts would fall off before that. So very, very interesting change to cannons, which will potentially make it a bit more viable. Again, this happens for the execution as well, but we're going to cover that later on as we get to the epic weapons. Then we have the Hulk, which is the special rarity turret cannon right there. That one will have its projectile explosion damage reduced again by 7%. And then we have the AC-50 Storm, projectile explosion damage reduced by 10% and durability reduction as well. Now, in general, I know the Storm has been target of a lot of talk about nerfs and stuff like that lately, which it has also been very dominant. So I do to some degree get it. I don't think this is necessarily to target the Storm in general, but I do, just like I said before, think it's an overall nerf to the way that the weapons deal damage right now, maybe because the devs want the battles to last just a little bit longer. But I mean, at the end of the day, if the battles have to last longer and be fun for everyone, they also maybe want to consider keeping the durability for the guns and just lower the damage, so you'll have to sit there and shoot for longer. But then again, they shouldn't make them just hit like wet noodles, because then you just stare at people shooting at each other for an entire match. So it's a fine balance, but I personally like that they are giving it a go. And we'll have to see how it works. This is just a test server after all, so don't forget that this is not necessarily final. And then after that, we have the Sinus, which is the special rarity machine gun. The special rarity machine gun will have its damage reduced by 5% and the durability reduced from 97 to 90. And then the Emily, they are actually increasing the reload for the Emily. So the Emily has 4 seconds of reload now. So once we empty this, we will only see, or 4.2, sorry, and it's reduced from 5. So the Emily has been targeted to quite a lot of buffs lately, and I'm excited to see where this weapon is taken, because I think a lot of people will start playing this. Last patch we saw it go from 5 to 4 energy, so it's really getting a lot of buffs lately. Then we have the Goblin Shotgun. 7% damage reduction for that one as well. And the junk bow, which is actually been buffed quite interestingly. So the junk bow is getting 252 points of durability instead of 235, as well as a 5% damage increase. Then we have the mace shotgun, which is a really strong shotgun. It deals so much damage, and that one is will have its damage reduced by 6%. Finally, for the rares, we will also see the piercer, which I cannot spell. There we go, right there. The piercer will have its durability increased, and then we have the synthesis and the boomsticks. First of all, the synthesis will have a 5% increase to its damage, and the boomsticks right there, which is just called boom now, will have its explosion damage reduced by 7%. So a mild nerf to the special rarity lances. Then we move on to the epic rarity, which is quite interesting. We won't have time to do a comparison because I've gotten on the test server so late. But basically what they're doing for the small tracks and for all tracks basically is that they're reducing the turning radius of all of these tracks. Would have been cool to be able to compare those to the live server version. I will do this if this ends up being what we will see in the final patch, then I will remember to record just with the different tracks so we can make a comparison once this patch potentially goes live, and once it is live we will make the right comparison to make sure that we get everything right. But for now we will kind of just skip it and just acknowledge the fact that it is there, and hopefully this will make tracks more viable in the game in general, because tracks are not very good. And this, just to cut that out in, you know, make everyone aware of this does not count for the Goliath tracks. This is only small, hardened and armored tracks. Then we will also see a 7% reduction in all power score points of epic rarity weapons. And here is the thing that I really do not understand, but we'll get to this. And I'll just, you know, start with saying that the Locust Missile will have its damage from missile explosion reduced by 7%. This is the Locust. For those of you that do not know this, I'm just going to jump a bit here in the patch notes because I want to cover the other type of missile, which I have seen is getting a nerf, which is the flute. And the flute will have its damage from the explosion reduced by 5%, as well as the missile durability reduced by 25%. And this is sort of where I lost it when I read these patch notes, because at the moment we have 3 weapons which deals by far the most alpha damage in the game, like by miles. We have the flute, we have the Locust, these are getting changed, but I would say, you know, on the 3rd place, the flute, on the 2nd place, the Locust, and then here on top, on the 1st place, we have the Cricket. The Cricket is, in my opinion, probably the weapon besides a horizontal mandrake, but you know, you're not supposed to play the horizontal mandrake like that. But the Cricket is just a weapon. It's in the game. It's an epic weapon, by the way. It's not a legendary. It's not a relic, which it probably should be by the amount of alpha damage that it deals. But the Cricket is nowhere to be seen in these patch notes at all whatsoever. It is what it is. I have personally pointed it out in the patch when the news came out. I've seen a lot of people do that as well, so hopefully they have gotten their eyes up for the Cricket, maybe needing a nerf as well if they want to touch these, which, I mean, it's an epic weapon. It's not supposed to dominate top tier Clan Wars gameplay. It might be a utility weapon that some people play because it's fun and it's good. It's not supposed to be what you encounter right now as much as you encountered drones a month ago or typhoons 2 months ago. It's an epic weapon still. I just want to, you know, cut that out so everyone really just is aware of the fact that it's not supposed to be that good. It's a strong weapon, and I do acknowledge the fact that it is there, and I think it's great that we can use epic weapons, but in my personal opinion, it should at least be hit by a 7% damage reduction as well. Maybe even more, as well as some of the other missiles, like flutes as well. And then the other thing about flutes, why are they changing the durability? This missile literally has like 1 HP already, so now it has 0.75 HP. The missile instantly detonates if you're close to a spark. When I'm playing my Clan Wars hover build here, which has flutes, this one, if I shoot when a spark is near me, and he doesn't even have to be near me, he can be, you know, at that position over here, and still make me self-inflict over 1,000 damage to myself because the missiles explode like this. It is what we saw with porks long ago. They gave the porks around a second of invulnerability, so you couldn't blow them up instantly, at least with the spark. And I mean, in my personal opinion, that's what we should see on the flute as well. Next to the damage nerf, of course, because it is still very strong. So I do fully acknowledge the damage nerf, even though I play them myself. I'm totally fine with it. But moving on from that, a little side story there. But moving on from that, the Executioner is at least getting a buff again after it was nerfed quite heavily. And I personally like this. I'm also very interested in seeing how this will work, because against light hovers, I feel like this thing will now tear those apart. This will now penetrate 132 points of durability, or 200 centimeters of armor. 200 centimeters is pretty much the same amount of penetration as the Scorpion. And if we just check the scope, I think it just said, yeah, it just says 2 meters instead of 200 centimeters. So this is literally up until 7 blocks right now. And this means that you will potentially, if you hit a light craft, be able to hit them from the inside with not only just what the Scorpion does, you know, just full damage straight through in a line. You'll be able to go 7 blocks in and then even cause an explosion inside the build, which makes it super strong. But that's not there is more coming that will be potentially even better than this. Getting to that once we hit the legendaries though. Then, moving on to the Elephant, and the Elephant is actually also getting a bit of a damage reduction. The projectile explosion damage, so the explosion once you've shot, gets quite a damage nerf, 5%, and then the durability is reduced by around 45 points of durability. So it's slightly less durability on that thing, and the Elephant is quite good, so, I mean, I guess it makes sense. I don't see it that often, so it's okay. And then the Whirlwind, also, like any other weapon, getting its damage reduced by 5% and a little bit of durability. Don't think this is necessarily to target whirlwinds, even though they were targeted earlier, but just to overall lower the damage of the lower tier weapons. Then we have the Pulse Rifle, which will actually have its damage increased by 5%, the adapter right here. So 5% damage increase on that one might make it a bit more viable. We don't see it very often, but I honestly think we will start seeing some people play this. Interesting, at least. And the Incinerator, which will now heat parts 33% faster from the fire portal. So you will hit that max heating easier and start dealing more damage to people. The Spike crossbow will also have a 7% damage increase, as well as projectile speed increase. So the projectiles that you will shoot with the Spike will now shoot faster. And that is indeed a very fast projectile, as you can see. And then we have the grenade launcher, which is the impulse grenade, which will have its rate of fire reduced by 10%. As you see right here. So that one will now shoot just a tiny bit slower, and then it will have its ammunition increased by 30. So you'll now have 150 ammunition on this instead of just 120. A tiny quality of life upgrade for those of you playing it, so you might not need to bring as much ammo, especially now that one ammo box will also give you more total ammo because of this base ammo increase, but a little bit of a nerf to the fire rate on the other hand. Then we have the Jewel, which, like any other, 5% damage reduction and a bit of durability reduction. So just general autocannon and machine gun changes. Also good machine gun changes coming, so stay tuned for just another couple minutes. And then the Machine Gun Spectra, durability increased from 162 to 186, and the Spectra is a gun that we don't really see all that much, so interesting to see indeed. And the Spectra will probably not be used a lot now, but it's just nice to see given them that they give some love to the machine guns, because machine guns are just not played all that much. So it's good to see, in my opinion. And the trigger also getting a bit of love, which will now heat parts 25% faster. Then we have the Thunderbolt, which is probably also one of the least used epic weapons in the game right now, which will have its damage increased by 5% and the durability increased from 157 to 173. So it seems like they definitely want to balance out the gap between the strongest and the lowest tiers of epic weapons. It's a welcome change, once again, as I said in my introduction, and I think it's very nice to see this balance changes, and we're almost at the end of them, so just stay tuned for a little bit more. Plenty of good stuff coming in the legendary section, at least in my opinion. The Fafnir, tiny buff to that one as well. Improve the weapons perk. Maximum efficiency is now 30% at 60 kilometers an hour. So this means that you will now actually have a pretty precise Fafnir once you're going 60 already. I think it was 70 or 80 before, and then a tiny durability increase to it as well. Pyres, which are already a pretty dominant weapon, are getting their damage increased by 15% and missile speed increased by 15%, meaning that now Pyres might potentially be just a bit harder to dodge. If you are a Pyre player yourself, you might see yourself getting just a bit more hits, or on the other hand, if you are Here we go. It still has a huge arc, so it's probably quite hard to hit any of these builds if you don't really have a radar on here. But you might find yourself just getting a bit more hits than you did before, because people might have a harder time juking them now. And you will find yourself dealing just a little bit more damage. Interested to see what this does to the Pyre. It's a bit of... I hate playing against homing missiles, I'm going to be very honest with you. But it's, again, not the most used weapon, so it's nice to see it get some love. Then we have the King. Mine explosion radius reduced by 10% and mine durability reduced. So an overall nerf to the King. I haven't seen them be that dominant. Like, they deal a lot of damage, but it's such a hard weapon to play. So I also think that you should be rewarded for it. But it might just again be an overall victim of this general damage reduction of all weapons to bring the general damage dealt down just a little bit. And Lance is also reduced by 7%. So, I mean, Lances, they've taken a hit quite some time. And this will lower it even more. Onto the legendary pods, which are where the money is at right now, for me at least. The Tsunami is getting sort of like a hidden perk, which means that it will now penetrate up to 3 layers of armor once you shoot it, and it won't explode until then. So a bit like what we saw on the Prosecutor. Can we just get that thing on there? There we go. A bit like what we saw on the Prosecutor, basically. This 3 layers of armor penetration before it explodes. Let's see. Right over there, so you'll be able to go through a bit more, and you can actually see the way that it works when you shoot this. You see how all of the rear stuff there is blown off, but the front one only lost the first part there. This is actually a good illustration of what this means, that you go through that first part and then the explosion happens on the other side of it. And that's basically what this perk does. It doesn't say anything about the perk here, so we're going to assume that it's just because it says it's an additional feature. In my opinion, they shouldn't be afraid to type down both here. Maybe they will do that, but at least it's nice to see they kind of get some love. And the only thing I'm speculating right now if it's actually better than the Typhoon, but we'll have to see if this hits the live servers, what this means for the weapon. But for now, I'm going to speculate that it's probably going to be on level with the Typhoon, honestly, pretty much. In some situations, at least. Not in like every situation, but in some situations it could potentially be. The Cyclone will have its projectile explosion damage reduced like any other gun. Again, a lot of people are bashing them quite hard for this, but I do want to just say again, I think it's a general theme of bringing down the overall damage dealt by everything that is at the moment decent. And so I don't necessarily think this is to target the Cyclone, because they have seen that these are strong. They have previously actually talked about, this is just something I want to mention, but they have previously talked about that they get their data from games played. One thing that could be the reason for the Cyclone nerf is because they've seen the Cyclone deal a lot of damage. The reason that they have seen this is because they have a ton of Cyclone bots, and these bots, as you remember, never miss a shot. So you'll have a Cyclone bot that fires at you from across the map and hits every single shot. And this is not a real player situation most of the time, but they always know where you are. So, you know, they shoot at you constantly, and this might bump up the numbers without it being legitimate. And I don't know if this is what it works or if they even lock damage dealt by bots, but this is the only theory, if that is their argument for nerfing the Cyclone. Otherwise, I don't see why. And then we have another nice nerf, or not nerf, but a buff rather, should I say, that I really think is a welcome one for a lot of people. The Reverb will have its ammo increased from 260 to 325. So we're actually seeing a decent, can we get up here? There we go. A decent amount of increase to the ammo of a Reverb, which means that you're now will be able to stock quite a lot of extra ammo on a Reaper without having to fuse all of your ammo boxes, which I think is nice, because the Reaper is a really solid weapon. So it's going to be even better for the people starting this game, that they don't have to spend money on extra ammo boxes and stuff like that. And then the Draco, not a very interesting weapon for a lot of people, getting a tiny nerf here. Not a nerf, a buff rather, 5% damage increase. Flame speed increased by 20%. And basically what they mean with the flame speed is sort of the range, essentially. Like, since the flame shoots a bit faster, it always also goes longer. So it's basically to increase the range of the projectiles coming out of the Draco. And next to that, we have the Assembler, which will also be getting a tiny damage nerf. The Assembler will have its great spelling there once again. But the assembler will have its damage reduced by 7%. And then the next one here, which is the aspect, which I think is very, very hyping to see that they are going to buff the aspect. The aspect will have its damage increased by 7% and the durability increased from 200 to 220. I would personally say that they should give this gun like 250 durability or something like that. It would still be able to be taken off in one hit by most weapons, but it would just make these things stay on here for just a little bit longer. I know it's a small target, but it is literally paper right now. Shoot anywhere near it and you'll be sure to take it off, so it's not really a threat like that. And then also the imp, which is the rapid firing machine gun. The imp will have its damage increased by 7% and the durability increased, or not durability increased, only the damage by 7%. The pulsar will take a hit, and I think it's a shame because it's a very high tier legendary weapon right now, but again, if it's to match the general theme of lowering the damage, then it's fine, but it's such a good weapon right now. I just don't hope they destroy it, because it's actually a competitive legendary weapon right now, so we'll have to see how it acts. It's taking a really huge hit on the durability, and considering the fact that this is a huge weapon, like it's a huge weapon, it might end up being too much of a glass cannon on top of your build now, but we'll have to see how this works if it hits the final service. And then the two final ones here, which I don't really know what to think of. The Hurricane will get its damage increased by 15% and also missile speed increased by 15%. And the Annihilator will take another hit on the durability, which is another 10% removed from it. So it will lose another 6% of its, or not 6%, but 6 health on the drones. They were 60 now, they are gonna be 54 after the change to it. And I mean, they don't really ever hit the essential issue with this drone, which is also now stuck. There we go. Which is again that they're just so hard to hit, and they will continue being hard to hit, even if they give them 1 HP. So in my opinion, they're still changing the wrong things about that one, but at least they are doing something about it. Nevertheless, that is all for these changes. I hope you guys can put this to good use and maybe just reconsider the way that you think about this change. I don't necessarily think that they just like pulled out a piece of paper that said autocannon nerf because they didn't know what to do, and then they do that. I think there are some thoughts to this about reducing the gap between strong weapons and low weapons and bring it down, and just in general bring down the overall damage dealt in a match, so that matches will last a little bit longer and you will find that your build doesn't break up in parts after getting hit just one time, which is, as some of you more experienced players of Crossout might think, that it's just a construction error. But if you find your builds falling apart quite often, then you know you won't get motivated if you don't get a little helping hand, and I feel like a lot of people will with this, so we'll have to see how it goes. That has been it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, bye bye.